Happy winter solstice. A time for feeding the birds, watching the first shoots begin to appear above the soil, and enjoying those winter favourites as they bloom among a blanket of leaves. The kitchen garden already shows promise for the season ahead. And the winter sun glimmers gold as it twinkles and sparkles across the winter garden. And whilst there are still jobs to do, everything takes on a slower pace at this time of year, as both we and the garden take time to rest and reset. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sundays in the Garden. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and on this channel I share all of the things I'm getting up to in my English cottage garden and kitchen garden area. If you're new here, it would be a wonderful Christmas present to have you subscribe and follow along with all of the things I'm going to share in the garden in 2025. I've been sharing my garden on YouTube now for just over a year, and in that time the community has grown so much and I've made so many lovely friends. There is loads of useful help and advice in the comments section on different videos that I've shared, and we all just learn and grow together, so it would be wonderful to have you as part of the growing community. I have so many plans for 2025, but before I get into any of that, I'm going to take a little look back over what has been a wonderful 2024. There have been some challenges for gardeners this year, lots of wet weather, always probably lots of slugs and pests, but we've got through and had some lovely harvests nonetheless. So grab yourself a cup of tea or your favourite warm drink, sit back and have a look at some of the highlights in the garden and kitchen garden area in 2024. Like so many of you, the first flowers to bloom were the snowdrops, followed by the bulbs poking through, and the crocus lawn looked the most magnificent it has ever looked. One of my first jobs of the year was to plant up these chimney pot herb planters. I picked up the chimney pots on Facebook Marketplace, and the herbs growing here have done so well in 2024. My new rainbow planters were so vibrant as I looked out of the dining room window, as were the collection of spring bulbs as they began to bloom. The grape hyacinths were abundant as always, and in the spring garden the daffodils put on a cheery show. In the kitchen garden, there was lots of work to do to get the beds ready for the upcoming growing season. As you can see, this one here was full of weeds, so I spent the best part of a day digging out all of the weeds, covering the bed with cardboard, and then topping up with compost. I built this metal archway for my runner beans to grow up, and continued to enjoy some lovely harvests from the kitchen garden, including this delicious leek. I loved my new archway so much, I decided to build another one and attach them together to create a larger structure for my beans to grow up. And as the weather warmed, the clearing continued as my children enjoyed their garden. The forced rhubarb was absolutely delicious and provided a welcome treat in the earlier part of the season when not much else was growing. And then came the tulips, and what stunning tulips they were. All of these bulbs came from Farmer Gracie, and I couldn't be happier with them. The lawn had taken a battering in the winter of 2023, so it was time to top up with some new grass seed, and it took really, really well. And then the apple blossom. Spring had arrived in the garden. Wow! By early summer, the kitchen garden roses were at their magnificent best, and the foxgloves were in full bloom. At every turn, there was something beautiful to behold. The Roald Dahl roses were abundant, and the broad beans were the success story of the kitchen garden in 2024. Look how fluffy these peonies were. When midsummer arrived, I made sure to take some time to sit back and really appreciate the garden when it was at its magnificent best. Taking time to stop and smell the roses every day was something I really looked forward to. Look at the height of those broad beans. My favourite place in the whole world. Later in the summer, clearing began at the back section of the kitchen garden. And sitting under the willow tree, looking out over the kitchen garden, fast became my favourite spot. My crops thrived as I fed them my homemade comfrey plant feed. And each week I took a few moments to cut some flowers to enjoy on the kitchen windowsill. The sweet peas, though short-lived, were magnificent while they were there. And we enjoyed handfuls of fresh blueberries every day. Look at this agapanthus, what a beauty! The fuchsia was stunning, the crocosmia was fiery, and even the leeks didn't want to be outdone and went to flower and looked stunning. The nasturtiums began blooming, the harvests began coming, and the blackberries were magnificent as always. And then, with August, came dahlia season. And with higher temperatures came watering, and more watering. So many beans to enjoy with dinner, and I began to cut the lavender to use in my sister's wedding confetti. I first dried the lavender and then mixed it with rose petals that I had been collecting from the garden throughout the season. The weeds kept coming, so the clearing continued. And the pumpkins began to fatten and ripen on the vine. Autumn had arrived. I took some time to plant up some autumn and winter planters filled with ivy, cyclamen and heather. And raking the leaves became a daily occurrence. I then moved the leaves to the beds to provide some much needed mulch for the plants over winter. The dahlias just kept coming, with so many different varieties, shapes and colours to enjoy. At the back of the garden I planted up my new hellebore border, and I'm so pleased with the results. These flowers have been blooming ever since. I also started to plan ahead and planted some crocus bulbs in the lawn in the hopes of an even better display in 2025. The back section of the kitchen garden was fully cleared in preparation for a really exciting project which I hope to be able to share with you in full next week, so look out for that video before the new year. The hellebores were joined by other shade-loving plants such as heuchera, lamb's ear, astilbe and ferns to complete this lovely shady border in the garden. In November, it was time to plan all my winter crops, so the broad beans went in again, as did some winter brassicas. And despite the caterpillar's best efforts, I sampled my first Brussels sprout. That is the best Brussels sprout I have ever eaten. And here we are, at the end of another wonderful year in the garden. Looking back on all of that at this time of year is just something so wonderful, and if you've got photographs or videos of your times in your gardens this year, have a look at them now, because you can hardly believe that your garden looked that abundant when it's also dormant and quiet at this time of year, and it's just lovely to reflect on the changes and the wonderful year we've all had. So what have I got planned for 2025? Well, I was kind of getting to a point now that I've been on YouTube for a year that I was not sure which direction to go in, what kind of things to share, and I thought what would be useful to myself, because if I'm enjoying what I'm making and it's going to be useful to me, hopefully it might be useful to other people as well. So with that in mind, I've set myself 3 garden challenges for 2025. Number 1, I'm going to try to film what is going on in the garden every single day of the year in 2025. I won't be here every single day of the year. I might be away working. I might be only here when it's dark, leaving the house early in the morning, getting back late at night. I might be on holiday. However, I'm still going to vlog every single day of 2025. It might just be my thoughts, like I wish I was in the garden. Here I am today doing this. Whilst I'm having a good time, I'm thinking about the garden. I'm just going to share my thoughts on the garden every single day in 2025 is the aim. Lots of the time it will be out in the garden and showing you what's growing and talking about what I'm doing on a daily basis. And sometimes it will just be my garden thoughts for the day if I'm doing something else. But I'm going to film every day of 2025. This may be a tall order, but it's my gardening ambition. I will share the weekly updates of those kind of diaries on a Sunday. So it will be the previous 7 days shared on a Sunday of what I've been getting up to, my thoughts and my gardening journey in 2025. Second challenge, I'm going to try and write a diary every day in 2025 of what I'm doing in the garden. So my thoughts written down, because I used to write a diary when I was younger, and it was nice to look back over what my thoughts were on any given day, you know, from 5, 10, 20 years ago. My granddad, who is one of my massive garden inspirations, also used to keep a daily diary. He wrote down what the weather was like that day and what he was doing and his thoughts on the day. And I want to see if I can do that, but keep it garden related. So I think I will write down the weather, because that's very important to us gardeners, maybe the temperature, and also just my thoughts on the day and what I was doing in the garden that day. Also maybe what's blooming, because that'll be interesting to look back. Oh yes, the tulips bloomed on this day last year, or they started to come out. We had our first daffodil on this day in 2025. So the first rose bloomed on this date in 2025. I think that'll be really useful to me to have written down and to have recorded in video form, so that I can look back on that in years to come and see roughly what was happening. Now, we all know that no gardening year is the same. There's going to be different things every year, but this is my ambition just for this year, something to hand on to myself for the future, to hand on to my children for the future. Even, you know, a garden manual for someone, if we ever left the house, they'd have a whole record of what I was doing in the garden every day of the year that year. So that is my ambition number 2 for 2025. And my third challenge for the year that I'm hoping to achieve is to take a photograph every day of 2025 in 2 areas of the garden. I think the first one will be down near the house of the section of the garden that kind of leads up towards the greenhouse, and another photograph of the kitchen garden area every day in 2025, so I can watch it change, and then I can hopefully make a time-lapse video of the garden as it builds and grows and then ebbs away again at the end of the year, and it'll be a lovely record of the gardening year in photo form. So to recap, garden challenge number 1, vlog every day of 2025 somehow or another and share it on a Sunday. Number 2, write down what I'm doing in the garden and what the weather's like, and a little garden journal every day in 2025. And number 3, a photographic record of the garden every day in 2025. That third one has a caveat, because when I'm not here to take photographs, I just can't take a photograph. If I've got someone else here who can keep it going for me, if someone's watching the garden, then I'll ask them to do it for me. But it might just be that for a week or for a few days, if I'm not here, that those photographs don't get taken, and we hope that nothing massive changes too much in that short period of time that I'm away. But the vlogging, I hope I can make some kind of video every day in 2025 from wherever I am. And I hope to keep a garden journal every day in 2025. Again, if that sounds like something you'd be interested in to follow along with, please don't forget to subscribe so you can see if I manage to achieve my gardening goals for 2025. So with all that now said, I think all that's left to be said is I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas with your families in your gardens. You get some wonderful gardening gifts this year. I've asked for some new beds for an area of the garden that I think I'll be sharing with you next week. So between Christmas and New Year, look out for the video where I'm hoping to be able to share with you the big change that we've done at the back of the garden. Can you hear the robins come to say Happy Christmas? Happy Christmas! Where are you? Are you right behind me? And all that remains to be said is thank you so much to everyone who's followed my gardening journey in 2024. I have had some wonderful comments, lots and lots of lovely advice, and made some wonderful friends as well. Meeting some of the other garden YouTubers at Malvern was one of the highlights of the year. So thank you so much to everyone who's followed along. Have a wonderful Christmas, and I will see you perhaps next week for a little bonus video, and then in 2025 with my weekly garden vlogs. Am I going to be able to film every day of 2025? That remains to be seen. Join me in 2025 to find out. Merry Christmas, everyone!